On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there is having themselves a great day. Got a new Q post that we're going to share and really a nice little discussion around. I just don't know what the Dems can actually do at this point. And really, rather than saying the Dems, I'd rather say the deep state, just because I think it's more representational of the problem, because there's also some people on the right that I think are going to surprise us coming down the road. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot they can do. You've got to look at the timing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg passing, right? I'm going to assume that is kind of one of those things where God called her home, right? Like you can't really make that happen. Maybe you can, but I doubt it. So it happened when it did, which really has to make you wonder, I don't know, which side God's on. Is he on the side of good and healthy and freedom and all of those things, the American dream, what we were initially made for, the great experiment? Or did he have Ruth hang on just long enough so she could be part of the problem? And it seems that he didn't. And the timing of it is very, very interesting. On top of that, they're going to move full bore ahead on the Supreme Court nomination. I'm going to talk about that as well coming up here shortly. But what's also interesting about that is when we get to this place where maybe the elections are in question, right? Because that's the other big thing they're doing. When everything's in question, we'll now actually have that ninth Supreme Court, which will be more of a constitutional Supreme Court justice, and in which case that's going to help us through this potential nightmare that may be sitting in front of us. Certainly the Dems are trying hard, so there's not a lot they can do. I've heard they can maybe consider impeachment, right? She's talked about having a couple bags of tricks in there. I can't imagine impeachment working, right? They go down that path. The American people are going to see right through it. It will be considered an absolute waste of time and will totally backfire on the left. They are going to do everything they can to try to get this whole voting thing, right, to keep us from being able to vote. And they're probably going to try to bring out more riots. Now, we've got discussions around all of these things, and we're going to get right into it. This is an amazing time that we are living in. This is a historic time. And certainly this will be the time that all of us can talk about the great thing we did. We will be the grandparents that our kids talk about when they fought for freedom. That will be us that they're talking about, because this is now our generation's turn to defend the freedoms of this wonderful country of ours. Now, some of the people on the dark side, Pelosi, what's really weird, and this is one of those things, again, I don't know what else they can do right now. I think that truly the walls are closing in around these people. Pelosi's funding bill lacks the GOP farm aid, so she's, of course, trying to hit the Republicans right where it hurts, right? And in her mind, I'm not going to give you the farm aid. But what that does is it actually causes all the farmers to not think real highly of her, right? Doesn't that seem to kind of work against her a little bit? So again, the whole thread around the shutdown, they're going to be talking about that, yada, yada. She's probably going to try to tie this to the additional funding that she wants for California, New York, and all these states that mismanage themselves. So we've got a little bit of a battle here. But ultimately, I don't know, maybe an executive order is going to solve the day like it did last time. If not, right now, the American people are pissed off at Congress, not pissed off at one side. They're pissed off at both sides. And that seems to be continuing. Now, again, when I talked about what are they going to try to do, bring more riots? Well, that's possible. We certainly have a case here where we've got Ocasio-Cortez talking about, and I'm just going to read it. Let this moment radicalize you, she said. Let this moment really put everything into stark focus, because this election has always been about the fight of our and for our lives. I need you to be ready. And so, again, I'm not going to play her because I don't like her, and I think she gets way too much attention. I mean, she's a very attractive lady, don't get me wrong. Beautiful, in fact, but she's horrible on the inside. She's got a dark heart, and I don't like it. So, yeah, she's talking about let this moment radicalize you. I don't know how else to interpret that, but certainly interesting when people on the left can say stuff like that and nobody wants to censor them. Nobody shuts them down. No Twitter shutdown happens on that. But if anybody says anything that even can sort of kind of be construed as almost violence, they'll shut down that channel in a heartbeat if it's on the right side. It's just very funny how this works in reality. So again, they could call out for more riots, but as we've seen, riots poll poorly. It's hurting the left, and any more additional riots are only going to continue to erode away at any potential support the left has, and is truly making the progressive and BLM movement both enemies of the state. It is working completely contrary to what they're trying to do. They already cashed in on that 100%, and it didn't work. What are they going to do? Cash in on it more? Maybe. It's not beneath them to do that. One thing I want to point out that's also interesting, it's happened, well, a few times in this country now, but twice in a major sense. And we got another explosion that hit South Lebanon. And this one was apparently centered around a Hezbollah arms dealer or arms depot. Now, we again had explode ammonium nitrate, some stockpile that supposedly blew up in that last one. And that was huge, by the way. This one doesn't look nearly as severe. And there are no videos of it actually happening. So I just, warn you right there. I don't have anything better to offer. But it wasn't huge. But again, it's showing that stuff is happening in this country. And it really does make you think of satellite energy weapons. If Israel's just up to their old antics, you never really know. But again, more stuff is hitting some of these deep state areas, some of these places that constantly are involved in the rocket making that seems to keep shelling into Israel. And these sorts of terrorist activities are stopping. And again, all of this terrorist type stuff seems to be a very deep state centric thing. It's their way of controlling people. You do it through fear, right? So that we'll see how that all plays out and continues on. Now, the big question, the Supreme Court. Of course, everyone's like, should we fill the seat? Should we not fill the seat? Blah, 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 blah. Well, they're going to try. That's certainly going to move forward on it. And I think Chairman Lindsey Graham had a really cool little note, letter, whatever, he sent to Senator Feinstein, Leahy, Durbin, Whitehouse, Klobuchar, Coons, Blumenthal, Hirono, Booker, and Harris. Booker and Harris specifically are two that are going to get highlighted, of course, many, many times coming up in the full future. But essentially what he's writing is, when the American people elected a Republican Senate majority in 2014, Americans did so because we committed to checking and balancing the end of President Obama's lame duck presidency. We did so. We followed the precedent that the Senate has followed for 140 years, since the 1880s. No Senate has confirmed an opposite party's president's Supreme Court nominee during an election year. He continued, lastly, after the treatment of Justice Kavanaugh, I now have a different view of the judicial confirmation process. Compare the treatment of Robert Bork, Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh to that of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sonia Sotomayor, or Elena Kagan. And it's clear that there already is one set of rules for a Republican president and one set of rules for a Democrat president. I therefore think it is important that we proceed expeditiously to process any nominations made by President Trump to fill this vacancy. I am certain if the shoe were on the other foot, you would do the same. So again, he is calling out the left very much on their shenanigans and basically saying, look, we've finally figured it out. We know what you would do in this case. We're not going to take the high road. We're going to do what you would do. We're going to do exactly what you would do. The left is the one that wants to panic, wants to throw a tantrum, wants to get out there and say, we're going to stack the courts. We're going to take electoral college away. We're going to... Oh, you're going to sit here and threaten us with stuff that you're actually losing power to even possibly do at this point. And, by the way, making you look like the monsters that you are. That seems to continue to happen. And I think that's one of the reasons this guy, Mike Braun, his Supreme Court fight will be a catapult for Trump, vulnerable Senate GOP races. And he brings up some very, very good points here. He talks about some of these places in this particular sentence here. Brown told Breitbart News that the upcoming Supreme Court fight to replace the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg would help vulnerable Senate Republicans and the president's reelection effort. The Hoosier conservative charged that the Senate fight would boost Senate Republicans up for reelection in a similar manner to how the then Sens Joe Donnelly and Claire McCaskill opposed the confirmation of then Supreme Court Justice nominee Judge Brett Kavanaugh. These people that were so horrible to him, in some cases, lost their seats. This is going to be a powerful movement for a lot of people that understand that the Constitution and the fact that there's a two-tiered system and the fact that certain people have one set of rules that seem to apply to them and the rest of us have a different set of crap rules that are far worse than those neat rules that those people have. So people are starting to wise up to this, and it's starting to backfire on all the people that are trying to get away with murder right now. Now, something that's been on the lips of many people lately is, of course, the wonderful debates that are going to be coming up. Well, Chris Wallace apparently has picked out some debate topics, and this particular article here in Breitbart says he omitted several key issues. I agree that he omitted several key issues. I think one of the issues is far less key than most people make it out to. And I'm going to call that out because I think it's something that is constantly brought up by the left as the main reason why stacking the courts to favor constitutionalists is a bad idea. We're going to get to that in just a moment. But Fox News' Chris Wallace, the moderator for the first presidential debate of the general election next Tuesday, has chosen the topics that President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden will face, and appears to have maybe omitted a few. So, subject to possible changes because of news developments and whatnot, but the current plan is to discuss the Trump-Biden records, the Supreme Court, which I think might be a moot point by the time the 29th comes around, COVID-19, the economy, race and violence in our cities, race, by the way, which is just very funny, but violence for sure. Interesting how they phrase that, right? This is Chris Wallace, major deep state player. Doesn't matter if he's on Fox News. Hello. They're all deep state players on all these mainstream medias. Again, it's all fake media. There's a couple good people on Fox. For the most part, it's just as bad as anywhere else. The integrity of the election certainly is a big deal. So those are the key things that they're going to talk. Now, this person feels this list excludes foreign policy, which I think it does. China, Russia, I mean, that they could do probably an entire debate on that. Maybe that'll be the next one. But I definitely agree for sure. That's a huge key thing. Abortion is the one that I disagree with. I'm going to show you some evidence that I don't think it's on anybody's mind, really. I get why some people are bringing it up, and that's always the key one. Well, they're going to take away your right for abortion. I don't know if that's as big a problem as people make it. Climate change is another one. I'd like to call it some other things, but whatever. Climate change is cool. Immigration, healthcare, education, and other issues voters consider important. I mean, that's good points, but the abortion one's the only one I just really want to call out. When you get down into the non-economic problems and you scroll all the way down, you finally find abortion here. And as you'll see, there's only one thing that came up in March 2020. No one cares about abortion. It is, they do, don't get me wrong. It's a very important thing. It's super horrific. It's super complex. It affects a lot of people. It's actually something that's somewhat really heavily affecting the Black community right now. Again, I'm not trying to downplay the nastiness of abortion, but from a standpoint of where our nation is right now, abortion is not really on that list and shouldn't be, frankly, right now. It's a very personal, religious kind of choice, and I get where we're at with it. So I please hope I haven't offended anybody, but I think it's a deeper process. Now, something that's, again, on the mail-in ballot side, I think people are seeing this. We've got lots of evidence. All these people that are like, there's no evidence. This is all made up. And they get all these fact checkers that come out and say it's just made up when people say that elections have problems. Well, that's not true. And a lot of stories are coming out now because, well, guess what? A few more states did some midterm and did some of the some voting by mail. And sure as shoot, they had a difficult time with it. Now, what's interesting here is they're still 40 days away from the election, and they just saw a whole bunch of votes that they had to kick out. There's 100,000 of them apparently statewide. That could mean throwing out more than 100,000 mail-in ballots on the November 3rd presidential election. And the reason they're freaking out, I don't know. I think this is good and bad, but it has to do with these secrecy envelopes, apparently. It's the Washington Times that kind of did a little bit more of an in-depth thing that they referenced in that other story. But they're talking about how if the ballot is not sealed within the secrecy envelope, then the ballot is literally just thrown away, period. Not looked at. They don't care who you voted for. Fact of the matter is, you don't have the security envelope. You don't have the proper envelope. And so your vote doesn't count, which, frankly, I like that. One, these are hard to fake. It's very hard to fake the envelope. The actual ballot's just a regular, you can Xerox that at Kinko's or Office Depot or whatever the hell. It doesn't matter. Your next door neighbor's house. Like, you can make those anywhere. These envelopes are surprisingly challenging to make. There's watermarks. There's all sorts of other things. So the people complaining about how hundreds of thousands of votes might not get counted, this could make the difference of whether or not the President Trump barely won this section by 44,000 votes. Oh my God, 100,000 will put him over the edge. Okay, well, let's think about the kinds of people that would likely vote this way. Typically people that don't quite understand how voting works. Maybe, I don't know, maybe English is a second language. Maybe they just don't really understand our culture. Maybe they don't, they haven't really been here very long. Maybe they don't get it. Maybe it wasn't translated well. Don't know. There's always the possibility that these could be people that are cheating, right? And maybe they don't have the part that's hard to cheat. So they figure they can just dump a bunch of crap ballots and get away with it. So again, I don't know. Some probably other people can fall into that same category. Maybe some older people, which could very well be conservative, might have a hard time. Maybe their dementia's kicking in, right? Okay, I'm willing to sacrifice the dementia bound on our side, who typically tends to be pretty highly educated for the most, well, somewhat on some parts, and then not on the other. But whatever. We're going to take our chances on it. I'll tell you that. But I don't think this is going to be the problem that they make it out to. I don't think it's going to cost us the election, but it will certainly cause questions of the election. Certainly one more illustration of why it's a bad idea to just vote by mail. You want to do absentee ballots? Awesome. Do that. That's beautiful. You got to mail in something. They mail something back to you. There's a process. And they're expecting your ballot back. Like, you're expected to use that again. You don't have to, but they at least expect that, oh, we sent out 140 absentee ballots. We should probably get 140 absentee ballots back. Not, we sent out 50 million ballots. I don't know how many we're going to get back. I have no idea. We could get 60 million back. Who knows? We have no idea how many we're going to get back. That's a bad idea. Doesn't make sense. Horrible idea, in fact. We'll see how that plays out. Now, when people talk about how, the colleges are so good, they're really there just to teach people how to critically think, not try to put thoughts into their head, because that's silly, right? That's not what teaching is about. Teaching is about allowing students to learn and come up with their own understanding of things. And I don't think that's actually even remotely true. Let's see what this particular teacher was teaching her student here.
For 4 years, because that's what people say. Give him a chance, give him a chance. Well, he's had 4 friggin' years of a chance, and he's done a crap job, and he's really ruining our country. Many of you, this may be the first time that you're voting. I'm sorry, it's such a contentious situation that you're being thrusted into. If any of you do still think Trump, is a good person, I beg you to not only go into your heart center and think about this a little more, pull up all the stuff that he's been doing to our country, taking away so many of our rights. He's trying to turn this into more of a, dictatorship type of situation.
Now, that's one of the funniest parts to me is, one, they call him a dictator, which, you got Ted Wheeler, you got de Blasio, and all these that are literally being dictators right now. Not Trump. Trump said, no, it's up to you guys. So again, they're calling him a dictator, talking about taking our freedoms away, when in reality, he's working on giving our freedoms back. It's the left. It's the deep state. The people that the teacher wants you to vote for are the ones that have been taking away your rights, making rights that you can't say certain things. And here's an example of somebody that's, first off, she sucks at talking. Third off, though, if she's spending time trying to tell her students, no, you shouldn't vote for this person, and here's why. And if by chance, after all this horrible stuff I've said, you still like Trump, maybe you should consider looking up information that's very heavily tainted against him and then judge him. The other thing, they said he's accomplished nothing. Really, he's accomplished more than any other president to some degree. And secondly, he's accomplished all of that while being fought from both sides. The media hates him. The left hates him. He's still managed to accomplish more. Again, I'll put your record against anyone. Shoot, Joe Biden's been in office for 47 years. He's got very little to hang his hat on. In fact, he flip-flops every other day. He's changing hats daily. It's crazy. Now, another person that gets to spread, and I think this is one of the things, they've got to really try to control this narrative. It's, again, we got to keep the virus in the media, which that's coming up. We got a really cool story about that. We got to keep them from being able to support the Supreme Court justice, got to keep that from happening. And then on top of that, we've got to keep the narrative going that Trump is bad, evil, wicked, orange man bad, evil, wicked, orange man bad. Keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it. People eventually believe it. So we've got Cory Booker here talking. I'm not going to play them because I dislike this dude. And I think he's a waste of time. But the one thing that they called out Trump on is, quote, his rank racism and demagoguery. And what they're quoting him on is, at the rally held on Monday, Trump said, quote, suburbia has got to wake up because if they get in, you know who's in charge. You know who's in charge of the program? Cory Booker. So I think the suburban woman and suburban men and husbands and wives and everybody, you better get smart. That's what Trump said. Now, does Cory Booker hate Trump because Trump is going to just wipe up his little girlfriend, Kamala Harris? Yeah, totally. Does Cory Booker hate Trump because he keeps kind of pointing out how sucky Cory Booker is? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's part of it too. But nowhere in here do I see a racism at all, even a little. So one thing that a lot of people are starting to wake up to as well is this incessant need from the progressive craziness to just call everyone a racist. Doesn't matter what you are. If I don't agree with what you said about climate, you're going to call me a racist. I mean, I know you'll probably call me a climate denier or something else, but yeah, you call me a racist too, just for the sake of doing it, because it's always the white supremacists that don't believe in climate, right? Isn't that how it works? Crazy progressive lefties that might be watching this channel and somehow gotten this far into the video. And seriously, I mean, oh, maybe you're the thumb down people. I don't know, whatever the case is. You're awesome, and I welcome you, and I love you too. But that being said, yeah, Cory Booker's not. He's a piece of trash. Come on, please. So whatever. We don't care about what you said. But Cory Booker is definitely going to mess with these people because of what Biden's going to put him in charge of. So it's pretty important that people understand, Booker's not going to be your buddy. And this is the reality you get if Trump's not our president coming soon. Now, this is kind of interesting. And I share this only because I think it's pretty illustrative of the fact that Trump is kind of standing outside of the Republican, Democrat political party structure. The very nature of the party structure is divisive. It has to be. By the very nature of having a hot and cold, you kind of have to have a division, right? Warm's a mixture of the two. But you don't really know that unless you know what hot is and unless you know what cold is. Left and right needs a left and a right. They need a polar. Trump's kind of more outside of that and like, look, whatever you are, I don't care. But here he is. He's calling out. And he's like, basically, I'm a little upset with the Republicans. And so he goes, does anything happen? Nothing happens. He talks about all the spying that happened on him. And have any of these Republican senators done anything? No, because it's a hot potato right now. And FYI, some of these Republican senators are deep state as well. Trump has been fighting this all over the place. And we're going to see how many of them finally put the white hat on and how many of them keep the black hat on. But ultimately, we're getting through this election. They better get on board. And for the most part, they kind of have been. But does anything happen? Nothing happens, Trump said at an event in Dayton on Monday evening. I'm so angry at Republicans. I'm so angry. But a lot of things are happening. That's Trump for you, right? He's not really mad. He's just being Trump. Now you're just, making up stuff. And so good on you. That's cool. But at least he's kind of calling out the Republicans for being, pains in the patootie as well. Because what the F, man? What are you guys up to? What are you doing? I don't know. Right? They could be doing a little more maybe. Now, this is fantastic. I was literally just telling my girlfriend about this story this morning because I think it's ridiculous. So I'm like, yeah, they came out with a story that now COVID's airborne. CDC, by the way, came out with a story that COVID's airborne. And it's not just these micro drops. It's not that it's just, floating around willy-nilly. But if someone just talks, that it's not just the spittle, but you could accidentally create a little hyper tiny drop. And then it goes airborne and then it floats around. Well, and the problem is, one, it's meant to create more fear. Two, it's meant to make this sound like it's impossible to ever get away from this, that we need to stay shut down forever, which is never going to make it go away, right? Because, you shut down for 5 years and then someone walks outside and somehow manages to find that one COVID virus that's still floating around. Then you give it to everyone all over again. So it's a stupid idea. On top of that, it also creates a problem because most masks are not designed to be able to stop particles that are micro size. In fact, there's a lot of question as to whether or not the coronavirus is smaller than the standard size mask, but whatever. When you go into micro droplets, you're certainly getting into even smaller sizes. So again, it's a very interesting thing. This was the story that came out. And then immediately, within 24 hours, they change it. They cancel it. They pull it back. And not only that, freaking CNN even talked about it. Huh? I know. Let's check it out.
Confusion tonight from America's top agency in charge of containing the spread of coronavirus over what to tell Americans about how the disease can travel through the air. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has just taken down new guidance it had posted just on Friday. Guidance which said that coronavirus could be spread not just by coughing, sneezing, or talking through larger droplets, but also in tiny aerosolized droplets from just breathing or talking normally. And the new guidance had said those aerosolized droplets could remain in the air longer and travel distances beyond 6 feet from activities like choir practice, fitness classes, and talking in restaurants. But tonight, that new guidance is gone. Taken down, the CDC says, because it was only a draft and was posted in error.
They were likely coming under pressure yet again from political interests because of what the repercussions of acknowledging aerosol or airborne spread might be.
A federal official familiar with the situation tells CNN the retraction was not due to political pressure from the CDC's overseer, the Department of Health and Human Services, or from anyone else. But the
Yeah, done playing all that. But isn't it kind of funny how CNN does that? How they say, well, the reason they probably took it down was because it was political. And then, well, the CDC federal person says that that's not why it happened. And so what is the user supposed to do? You've just provided two pieces of information that contradict each other. What, huh? So it's just weird the way they play it out. And then again, the reason it came out, I don't think it had anything to do with the fact that the CDC was being politically challenged. I think the deep state was trying to force the CDC to put out bad information, and somehow it retracted. And it's just, again, very interesting that this even proves that CDC puts out false information sometimes, don't they? They put something out that was wrong. Who's double checking this? You've got someone that literally just had a draft that so completely disagreed with actual reality and then somehow was able to publish that to the actual web page. Is that what you're telling me, CDC? Because that concerns me on a whole different level. So again, I think we're seeing the bigger picture, and even CNN called this one for what it is: lies, crap, BS. And that's exactly what it was. So again, yeah, this is where I initially saw the post on Natural News. Good old Mike Adams. CDC backtracks on the new guidelines, saying coronavirus spreads through the air immediately after publicly posting them. It was a few hours, not so much immediate, but pretty funny. Pretty funny that the CDC, who's the one that's supposed to say everything, and if you don't quote something about the virus that's printed on the CDC website, you can get yourself in a little bit of hot water. Interesting that our background, our spell checker there, our little fact checker, is wrong. Completely wrong. Huh, interesting how that plays out. Let's check out the Q post. I don't think we have anything new from 4741. This is the newest and only post we have since the last time, and it's a good one. So the past 7 days have been very telling. We're going to get into that. Have you ever witnessed a full-blown international mainstream media constant barrage or counterattacks, as it were, regarding this conspiracy? In single quotes, I say, simple logic, answer the question. Simple logic will answer the questions for you. And what they're talking about here, of course, Nancy Pelosi is wondering how top Facebook employees can look at themselves in the mirror because they make money off of poison. Poison, I tell you. She should speak. I mean, it's kind of funny. She probably gets those injections too, which, by the way, is poison. Those little whatever. So let's not get off on the wrong track here. But yeah, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi slammed Facebook during a new interview with the New York Times. Pelosi said she held Facebook very accountable, not just accountable, very accountable, for posts on their platform to support of QAnon, a right-wing conspiracy theory that claims in part that the Democratic Party leaders are involved in child sex trafficking. I will say, of the QAnon stuff, you're at least getting closer to the reality of what Q believes, but still not quite right. That the Democratic Party lives by a whole separate set of rules. That's really what QAnon stands for. Sex trafficking just happens to be one of the rules you frequently break. But we took down your Epstein guy, didn't we? And Ghislaine Maxwell, she's talking up a storm. What about that Victoria's Secrets owner? Oh, that's right. Yeah, you guys are bummed. And not to mention, I forgot what country it is, Virgin Islands, I think, that are basically requesting all the flight logs of Epstein Air to see all the people that ever flew on that aircraft. That should be very interesting if that actually happens. So, yeah, Pelosi's a little miffed that they're letting people just talk about QAnon willy-nilly. What's really funny, though, if you think about it, again, this is how people are. If you ban something, if you say, don't look at this, this is bad, don't try this, it's horrible, everyone hates this, what does everyone do? Have you ever seen a wet paint sign? How many of you, when you saw a wet paint sign, touched it? When you see a wet paint sign, you touch it, don't you? It says, don't touch wet paint. You're like, is it still wet? Ew, sticky, gross. Everyone does it. So the second you point something out like QAnon and say, don't look at it, shh, it's bad, you're going to immediately look it up. And then people start reading it, and they're like, well, this kind of makes sense, actually. What? This isn't crazy. I haven't seen him mention eating children once yet. Huh. It's weird how everybody says strange things that don't seem to be true. And they also kind of point this little thing out here. QAnon, this is Bing. Why are we going to Bing? Who cares about Bing? because they're probably battling Google, I guess. But like a virus, QAnon spreads from the U.S. to Germany. QAnon on the ballot. 6 GOP-endorsed Minnesota candidates back conspiracy theory. Facebook tried cracking down on the spread of conspiracy theory and other extremist material, but QAnon groups are still flourishing on the site. Somehow, we can't stop them. Again, Amazon, Walmart donate to QAnon supporting politicians in Tennessee. Awesome. How Facebook can slow QAnon for real. Quite frankly, terrifying how the QAnon conspiracy theory is taking root in the UK. And that's the other thing that's kind of funny about it is a lot of people are like, it's all Trump. It's just Trump thing. And it's like, QAnon is taking form worldwide. Where we go one, we go all. And we, the people, is not just the United States. We are the experiment. We are the example. That is why it is so important that in the end, we are still a freedom-loving country that has a constitution that we believe in and Supreme Court justices that'll support it and getting the deep state the heck out of this government. This is our planet, and we are all taking it back. We got Germany coming on board, UK coming on board, Australia's been in the mix. We've got stuff happening everywhere because, again, where we go one, we go all. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.